Yes, we're going to dig right into what AI really means for SEO. We know this is such a hot topic and it can really be a confusing one. You might be seeing drops in your organic traffic. You might be checking out AI answers for queries that relate to your business. You might be testing AI tools, and most likely you're wondering what's next. And so, our goal today is to cut through that noise and help you refocus your strategy around what's actually changing and what still works. So here's what you can expect to walk away with today. Number one is what's happening in search today and how is AI changing it. Number two is why SEO fundamentals still matter and how we're adapting them for AI search. And the third is specific things that your team can do now to stay visible and competitive. So what can you do? How is search influence helping you do those things? And we'll share some real examples and give you a framework that you can be thinking about as you move forward.
All right, so what exactly is AI search and how is it different from traditional search? So we're going to take a look at the key players and how these platforms are reshaping search. So as you probably imagined, SEO is no longer just about ranking in Google's traditional results. AI search is different because it uses artificial intelligence to understand the complex queries people have, generate summaries, and provide direct answers, not just a list of 10 blue links that we've grown accustomed to. The most common tools that you've probably heard of are Google's AI overviews. There's ChatGPT, Gemini are probably the top three that you've heard a lot about. There's also Microsoft's Copilot, Perplexity, and plenty of other tools emerging. And while the AIs are trained on massive data sets, they also look to real-time content, citations, and schema to decide what gets included in their answers. So some people are calling it generative engine optimization, or GEO. We tend to prefer calling it AI SEO or SEO for AI search, because at the end of the day, it's still SEO. It's just adapted for today's search experience. So we're going to talk a lot today about what that really means for you. What it ultimately means is that your content needs to be structured, needs to be clear, positioned as a trusted source so that AI can choose you when answering a user's question. So something I found personally really helpful to understand in getting involved in all of this and understanding how we optimize is to understand how AI answers are actually sourced. How does the AI come up with the answer that it is going to give you or give a searcher? So when a user enters a query, the result will either be the large language model answering based on the training data that it was fed, or it will be grounded in external data sources. So the LLM and its training data, in this situation, it is using the LLM and reasoning to answer the searcher's query. When this is used alone, there can sometimes be what's called hallucinations, where the AI will fabricate information. This is why you hear a lot of people talk about needing to fact check, right? When answers are grounded, the other type of result, or what you see on this side, is retrieval augmented generation. It means that the LLM is connected to external data sources to validate its answers. So a key tell for whether or not your answer is grounded is whether there are citations or links provided. So I'll show you some examples of this. And depending on the intent and the level of complexity of the query, it will ground its answer in more real-time information and cited sources. So this process of grounding really helps to reduce those hallucinations or fabricated results. So some examples of this are Google's Gemini can actually use Google search for grounding, and ChatGPT is known to use Bing search. So there are two key ways you, as a marketer or a brand or an organization, can appear in AI-assisted search results. And it's either you're part of the answer provided by the LLM, no sources cited, or you are cited as a source when the LLM grounds its answer. So we're going to take a look at the actual anatomy of the difference between these. So what we did here was we used ChatGPT and entered a specific query, and we wanted to see the type of result we got. So when searching ChatGPT for the query, what universities offer online courses in emergency and security studies for mid-career professionals, long tail conversational search, we see a result like the one you see on the right-hand side of the screen. So this result is based purely on the LLM leveraging its training data. It's not based on real-time or validated with external sources. So you might appear as a part of this result, but this usually isn't something that you're going to be able to easily influence because it's based on that past training data. Alternatively, when we search ChatGPT for a different query, similar but different, are there any schools offering online certificates in emergency and security studies that focus on professional development? We get a response clearly grounded in more real-time data. It's using external data sources, and you can tell because there are sources cited at the top. I'm going to use my mouse real quick so you can see here. And then on each of the points, you'll see some citations there as well. This is where we find a correlation between your traditional organic rankings or authority, what we've always tried to influence with SEO, and whether or not you're cited within these types of answers. So what about Google's AI overviews? AI overviews are really essentially kind of a hybrid model. It's Google search plus an LLM. So it's a hybrid system where the retrieval is powered by Google's search index, but the output is generated by the LLM. So it's a little bit different than what ChatGPT is doing, but really effectively produces a very similar experience for the searcher. And I mentioned this correlation that we see between your positioning in organic search rankings, what we've always tried to influence with SEO, and whether or not you're cited in the AI. What we found, a really interesting study that was done by Right Sonic recently, where they studied over 1 million AI overviews. And so this is specifically on Google. And they found that almost 41% of the time, the Google AI overview citations, at least one of them came from Google's top 10 results for a similar query. So ranking well on Google doesn't just mean more clicks, it might also determine whether AI tools ever see or cite your content. So we do see this in practice for our own clients' websites, and I'll give just a quick example here. So this is an example of organic rankings for the keyword medical billing and coding degree. And you'll see that ranking in the third organic position is Ultimate Medical Academy. And then also the AI overview for the same search query also cites Ultimate Medical Academy. So one of the big questions that we get asked most is, how are actual consumers using AI search? Are they still on Google? Are they using tools like ChatGPT or Gemini? If so, how? And there's lots of talk and concern about how the search landscape is changing. And much of what you'll hear may make it sound like AI search is just like going to eclipse Google searches. And so we wanted to look at the data and see what it really tells us. So there's some new reports and studies out there. This one is from Datos and SparkToro, which are definitely a trusted resource in the industry. Some colleagues of ours that have been doing this for a long time. And they studied the overall share of desktop events distributed between e-commerce, which is the green on the bar chart, AI tools, which is red, and traditional search, which is blue. So that would be, the Googles, the Bings, that sort of thing. And what we see is that, yes, the use of AI tools is up more than twofold from January of 2024. And traditional search is down a little bit in March of 2025. What this tells us is that AI is definitely popular and growing and something we should prepare for and stay ahead of. But traditional search isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Traditional search still makes up the lion's share of the overall desktop activity. In fact, the number of searches done by each searcher on Google has increased in March 2025 compared to the previous year. And this is likely thanks to AI overviews, making the search experience much more intuitive and opening up the opportunity for people to engage in more complex conversations. And in doing that, Google actually grew their query volume by multiple ChatGPTs in 2024. And so again, what this tells us is that your presence in Google search, whether it's ads, organic, or citations in the AI overview, is just as important as ever. Okay, so what about AI search? Isn't that what this whole webinar is about? Yes, of course. And it's not surprising that AI usage grew substantially in both the US and Europe in Q1 of 2025 compared to the previous year. But what we see here is that ChatGPT is by far the largest player, and its rate of growth was very rapid at first, but it has slowed a bit over time. And experts in the search space predict that, much like the adoption of the internet or original adoption of search engines and social media, it's likely going to be kind of a slow burn as we increase and we see that the usage of AI platforms continues to increase before it could ever really eclipse, that search behavior that people are so used to. And what we also know from the past is that early adopters are most likely to win in those years to come. So from a research study that we actually sponsored and conducted with SEO, which is in the higher education space, we wanted to know, of the people who are using traditional search engines, do they read? Do they engage with the AI overview when it's provided? And what we found is that the vast majority of our survey respondents are engaging with the AI overviews. Over 3/4 read the AI overview when it's provided. And then within the AI overview itself, roughly half of those respondents said that they click the sources of where the overview content is coming from. So again, even if we're struggling to be visible with those top organic positions, being in that AI overview is likely to have an impact and create a brand impression. So just to summarize the current state of search, Google continues to own the majority of the search market share, and that's unlikely to change anytime soon. ChatGPT is the most widely used of all of these AI tools, and it is the fastest growing. And we believe if we keep our focus on Google search and AI overviews and AI mode, this is still where we're likely to have the most immediate and long-term impact. Optimizations we make to achieve ranking and relevance in Google's AI overviews will also have an impact in ChatGPT as well, based on what we know about these models.
So now we're going to turn our attention to how SEO is changing as a practice in this new AI-driven landscape. So there's some shifts happening, and it's kind of funny. We got the same number of bullets on the left and on the right. And for a really long time, I've been saying that my version of SEO 101 is keywords. What are people typing into the search engines? Content, how well do you say that on your website? And links. Are you deemed an authority by others out there on the internet? And so when we look at advanced AI search SEO, or generative engine optimization, which is still too much of a mouthful for me. Instead of keywords, we're looking at entities. And instead of content, we're looking at semantic relevance. And then finally, instead of links, we're looking at citations. And this is because of the way the AI LLMs work is they're drawing connections based on data that they infer, not like Google, where it's based primarily on links. So I'll just give you one quick example. Pretty much everywhere in the world, well, everywhere in America, you can get a sandwich on a piece of French bread that is stuffed with things, right? Stuffed with really tasty things. And so depending on where you are in the country, this sandwich has a different name. So the interesting thing is that that's an entity, right? So we may call it a different name. It may be a grinder somewhere, a hoagie somewhere else, a sub, maybe if you're in New York, but really we're talking about the same thing, which is a sandwich stuffed with stuff on a piece of French bread. And here in New Orleans, we have something that's very similar, but it actually has its own entity in Wikipedia. So the po' boy, in case you're wondering, is not the same entity as all those other sandwiches. So when you're thinking about the web these days, and Google's been thinking about this way since 2012, by the way, it's not so much about words. It's not so much about the strings that people type into the search engines. It's about the things that are represented in the knowledge graph that mean the same thing. So from that same study of those million AI overviews on Google, they found that 87% of the time, the exact query searched does not appear in the AI overview summary. So speaking to the idea of what are we really matching on? So the context, the entities, and the semantic relevance matter way more than the exact keyword these days. As SEO has been evolving from 10 blue links into a bunch of different features on the front page of Google. And so I use this for, for a pretty simple example. And you can see how the query itself or the prompt changes the outcome. So on the left is kind of traditional Google search, full-size SUV. And on the right is a more, a more kind of longer tail, thoughtful question kind of search, which is best full-size SUV with self-driving. So you get a lot more information on the right. You have an AI overview. You have what's called an entity panel, which is that bit below. And then you have right below that the rich snippet, which is that car and driver listing. So these are having a big impact on what we're seeing on that front page of Google. As they come together, we start to understand. I'm sorry, Alison. As they come together, and you'll see this on the next slide, we start to understand what's driving this. So when you look at the results in that original search, you'll see that there are actually a lot of vehicles there that are not in fact self-driving. But the reason that they're there is because they've wound up on somebody's top 10 list of self-driving vehicles, right? I can tell you for sure, the BMW X7 is not going to drive itself. My Yukon, however, does. So if you're looking for, but there you go. So these features are becoming really intrusive, and we've been having this conversation with clients for the last probably year and a half. And at first we were like, darn those AI overviews. But the reality is it's not just the AI overviews. It's also a bunch of new ad features that Google has launched. It's also different kinds of knowledge panels. So our client, NewOrleans.com, for whom we've worked on this ranking for the better part of the last 10 years, ranks #1 organically in Google. And you cannot see them in this screenshot. And this screenshot represents like 2 or 3 full scrolls if you're on a laptop at a normal size.
Yeah, and one thing I just want to point out to your point, Will, is like the zero-click searches have really been rising over time anyway. And so really, if we kind of flip the script and we think instead, of shaking the fist at the AI overviews as thinking of the AI overviews as an opportunity for us to get that impression again, even if there is, it still remains a zero-click search. Now we have the chance to, if we're cited there, we can make a brand impression and potentially get some clicks that would have otherwise gone to those organic listings or even these rich features.
And we didn't have this in our data, the data that you showed from Spark, Toro, and Datos. But one of the things that they're finding, and this is actual clickstream data, right? So it's people on the internet and they're somehow intercepting their searches. But one of the data points is that there's actually been an increase in brand search. So now your presentation in AI overviews is kind of like having a billboard. People are going to go search for you by name instead of searching by brand to find you.
Absolutely. All right. So the question that you all came here to get answered is, how does your brand or your website get cited or mentioned in the AI results, whether that be the AI overviews or AI search like ChatGPT? So we're going to kind of revisit those 3 pillars that Will introduced earlier and then dig in a little bit on each of those. So first is entities. And so we'll talk a little bit about this, but to break this down a little bit more, I'm going to go into some more detail. But entities are people, places, things, organizations that are already recognized on the web in the knowledge graph. So what we want to do is help AI recognize our brand, our products, our thought leaders, concepts using structured data and clear language in our content. The second of the 3 pillars is semantic relevance, which is how well you connect yourself to that knowledge graph and how well you interconnect the entities within your organization, within the content that you own. So we're going to get into this. We want to optimize for rich meaning content that reflects how people actually search. So for example, answering questions, connecting topics, and adding context when we can. And then lastly is citations, which, to Will's point, we've been talking about this for years and years in the form of usually links back to your website. And so now the focus is a little bit less on the links and more on how frequently are you referenced in trusted resources, and also how frequently do you reference out to trusted resources to establish that trust. So we're going to talk about how you build trust through authoritative sources, And we're going to get into some more real and specific examples. So to start, we're going to focus on entities and semantic relevance, because I understand that these are kind of like some big concepts. And it even took me a little while to really get down and understand what is meant by these. So first is an entity. Let's dig into this a little bit. An entity is a clearly defined thing, like a place, a person, an event, or an organization. And Google and AI tools like ChatGPT use entities to understand context rather than exact match keyword strings like search engines used to. So if your business or your brands or your thought leaders aren't well defined online as entities, then you risk being left out of the AI generated results. So what you see on the slide, interestingly enough, was actually generated from a conversation with ChatGPT. So we got ChatGPT to tell us exactly how it understood the entity that is Audubon Nature Institute. And so you'll see that it let us know that it sees Audubon Nature Institute as a nonprofit organization, which it is, and an attraction network that's known for managing top attractions in the city of New Orleans, focused on nature, wildlife, and conservation. It also knows that Audubon Nature Institute is an umbrella and has several sub-entities, which to us marketers, over the years, we probably thought of these as sub-brands or whatever. So for them, that's the zoo, the aquarium, the insectarium. And so to the AI, an entity also comes with a set of organizational entity data. So think of this as your owned assets, like your website, your logo, your social profiles, whatever it may be. And that right there is actually where we have the clearest opportunity to control and optimize the AI's understanding of our entities. So to show this a little more visually, we did what's called a version of an entity map. And what we know is that Audubon Nature Institute is the primary entity, right? And the zoo, Audubon Zoo, is a sub-entity of that. But because the AI can clearly understand the connection between those things, and that Audubon Nature Institute as a primary entity is defined as an attraction network, and it's known for managing top attractions in New Orleans, the zoo is then seen as both an attraction and falling into other categories like family-friendly activities. So what does this all mean? What does all of these lines and things mean? What it means is that when a search is done for something like fun things to do with kids in New Orleans, Audubon Zoo will be an entity offered in the result, because AI search is no longer looking for website pages that specifically say the keyword fun things to do with kids in New Orleans. It's looking for the entities that are known for being in categories semantically related to the conversational words being used. It's a little bit much, I understand, but hopefully seeing this visual helps a little bit. All right. So we're going to talk about how to help the AI better understand our businesses and our brands as entities. And so first up are changes to the way that we write content. So we have here a AI content optimization checklist, and I'm going to talk you through each of these points. So first, to make your content entity rich, you have to go beyond the keyword tools that we've been used to. We need to optimize for a network of related entities and identify what is our primary entity, like the example we just walked through, and build out content with connected concepts and expanding information to cover the full topic landscape. Second is specific and direct. We need to write specifically and directly as if you were answering a question, even when you are not directly answering in a Q&A format. Third is to chunk your content. Love this chunking term that we tend to use. But the idea really is to write your content in shorter, concise blocks, usually around 170 to 200 characters, because that is how AI overviews and rich snippets display information. So think about what the results look like, and you want to write in that kind of chunk in that way you're more likely to be included. And the better that you can chunk up your content, the less interpretation the AI engines actually have to do. Number 4 is search engines have understood structured writing since the beginning. That's why we've always used, H1 tags, H2 tags to actually break up content and to delineate the sections of the content. And that's also why page titles carry a lot of weight. So the more clearly you can organize your ideas and continue to use H1s, H2s, those tried and true tactics, the easier it will be for AI to understand your concepts and your ideas and to elevate them. And then 5th And finally is to make it authoritative by adding citations and links to external sources that you can use to validate what you're saying. There's always been a debate in SEO about whether or not you should link out and kind of give away your Google juice. But when it comes to AI search, linking out actually creates more trust and helps you. So if you're referencing something like a concept, a method, or a field linked to a reputable source, like a Wikipedia page or an industry website, and it'll strengthen that entity alignment. And outbound links can clarify what you're talking about and who you're aligned with in the knowledge graph. All right, so this is just kind of a visual example. I won't spend too much time on this, but showing you how you can take the type of content that you might already have on your website on the left that honestly at some point in time we probably told you was the right thing to do for search. And now optimizing a little bit to make it shorter and chunkier and more concise and a more specific formula to the language, which we're going to get into next. All right, so you may have heard of the semantic triple. I'm sure you learned about this in school a long time ago. We're going to talk about why it's important in sentence structure and because of how AI extracts facts. So we want to structure our content in clear fact-based statements. And so this means writing things subject, predicate, object. So an example that you see on the slide is Steinberg LLP tries personal injury cases. So that's something an AI model can easily recognize and use in an AI overview chat interface or even a featured snippet. So you want to try to write this way so that it surfaces those kinds of relationships really clearly. And start a section with a definitive statement like that, and then elaborate with additional information. So pretty much you want to do this anytime you're introducing a new topic, like the start of a product page, the top level chunk of content on your service pages, that sort of thing. It's going to be especially helpful at the beginning of the page or section where the AI is trying to figure out what your content is all about. All right, and then internal linking. We've all been talking about links for a long time, but in today's landscape, you want your internal links to be more based on linking to and from the entities rather than, like call to action type content like learn more or click here. This is actually one tactic that in my 14 years of working in the SEO space has flip-flopped a bit. There was always the idea of keyword-rich anchor text, and that is a tried and true SEO tactic where you'd want to link on your keywords that you cared about. And then at some point, it became more of a tactic to actually use some natural language and use CTAs in your anchor text. And now we're sort of back to that idea of entity-rich anchor text. So a little different from keyword-rich, but linking on the entity. And so you can see this example, instead of linking on learn more here, we're actually just linking on the name of the thing, the entity itself that we want the person to go learn more about. All right, the next tactical recommendation we have is schema. Schema is web code that reinforces entities and structures your content. It's really invisible to visitors on the front end of your website, but it marks up your content in the background and provides additional content that does not appear in your web pages. So it helps the AI engines and the search engine crawlers actually understand what content is what. And yes, AI-powered search reads and benefits from schema markup. Some types of schema are more influential than others, but we believe that it's a trust and a clarity enhancer. It's not a shortcut. So it's not the one thing that's going to immediately make you be a part of the AI answer, but it's really helpful. Some of our SEO strategists also believe through their experience that schema plays an important role in the grounding of AI responses, like we discussed earlier. So again, this is something you definitely want to take advantage of. One thing I wanted to note about this slide is that what you see on this slide is truncated just for good display. So it's not a full set of schema that you want to copy. And you definitely, if you're a client, an SEO client today, you are likely to hear your AMs bringing up schema and different types of schema more and more in the upcoming months.
So, we're back to the big three. And with the content and schema adjustments we've discussed, we're already building a strong foundation around entities and semantic relevance. So now let's talk about the third pillar of AI SEO, citations. We've loved directories for a long, long time, and they are a great citation source. And so it's interesting. I spent a lot of time in local SEO early on in the foundation of search influence, and and people felt like Yelp was getting a bad deal from Google. But Yelp, because it's a strong citation source, is now making a comeback with Google in the AI overviews. So when you think about those citations, the things that is important to remember are that it's about contextual mentions, right? It's about you in the context of the thing you do, and in some cases, the place you do it. There's something that we've talked about for a while now called co-occurrence, and that is the number of times that your brand occurs alongside a service or category that you're interested in. And so I just answered Shannon's question in the Q&A about using the Google Business profile. And one of the things that we're big fans of is using Google Business Profile posts, because you can use them to reinforce your brand plus service, and then to link out to content that similarly reinforces that. Other places that you can lock in that preferred phrase are PR boilerplate, bios of your faculty and staff and team, um, media placements. Like, I've actually started asking anytime I'm doing a podcast or I'm writing an article that my boilerplate include the phrase Will Scott, AI SEO expert, because I'm trying to influence the LLMs in their understanding of the connection of those two concepts. And then anywhere you have a chance to publish content about yourself, you should be thinking, am I reinforcing not just my entity, but the connection of that entity to those for which I want to get found? So there are endless sources of citations and links, and if you put the time and creativity into it, you'll get a lot out of it. Starting with directories is very easy. You probably already have the descriptions written. You just need to update them to be more entity rich. Media mentions are super powerful. So if you can get your PR team to think about the way that you want to be referenced, you can really reinforce across a broad spectrum the connection between you and the thing that you want to get found for. And one of the things that we tend to do is press release distribution. And so within that, those get pushed out through data feeds to hundreds and sometimes as many as 1,000 websites. And while they're pretty transient, they do get crawled and they do contribute to the understanding of your entity in that relationship. Um, I just talked about, I want to get referenced in speaker bios. Great, if you're speaking at a conference and they have an opportunity to give you a bio. If you're a guest on a podcast or a YouTube series, definitely use those there. And then we like to see where else we can publish content. And basically anywhere that you're putting your brand out there, you should be putting it out in association with the things that you want to be known for.
All right. So another question, thank you, Will. Another question that many of our clients are asking, which understandably so, given that we put such an emphasis on tracking and data, is what about tracking and analytics for all of this AI search? How do we know if we're being seen in AI search or if we're being cited there? And these are all the right questions to be asking. So today I'm just going to kind of give you an update on the current state of where things are with visibility tracking and AI search. What we are finding is that this type of data tracking and analysis is developing at a really rapid pace. There are a lot of different, software as a service providers that are kind of spinning up new tools and platforms and iterating on them really quickly. And we have been investing pretty heavily in R&D to evaluate what tools give the best and most useful information on performance monitoring, and then further which ones will help us with optimization ideas and decision making. So let's talk a little bit about what data we have today and then what's yet to come. So the data that we do have, one piece is in Google Analytics 4, presuming even if you're not a client, you should be in GA4 if you are not. We already have access to data that tells us whether or not the AI engines are driving any traffic to your website. So it's not surprising that, for pretty much any client we were to build this report for, we're going to see a steep increase in those visits over time, just because of the pace with which things are evolving in the AI space and the usage is increasing. But more than volume, what we can tell from GA4 to understand is what is the quality of the traffic that is getting to your site once it gets there from AI, which AI tools are being used to find you, which website pages are they landing on. So that tells us which pages are the AI tools actually referencing and citing in their answers. And so this is a page in Looker Studio, which is a standard report that we build for our clients that is actually being iterated on currently and will be coming soon to our client reporting dashboards, like readily available for you guys. Another set of data that we have is Google Search Console. So we can use Google Search Console, which already reports to us on what exactly people are searching and when your website appears or is clicked on. And so we can actually use Google Search Console to identify question word queries or queries that have 5 or more words, and we're usually using that logic to infer that that's a more conversational search. It's the same type of search someone is likely to put into an AI tool, and is likely to also generate an AI overview in Google search. So what I have on the screen is actually a regex example. This is a filter that we use on some of the Search Console data to pull from all of your queries and tell us what are the question word queries that people are searching. And so it is example on the screen that you see is right here. We're looking at all of the questions, just a sampling of some of the queries that include what for neworleans.com. So what we don't have is data that we've grown accustomed to having in the search space, which is an understanding of, keywords and how many times are people searching for a keyword in a given month or year or whatever. We don't yet have that for AI tools. We don't yet know exactly, how people, what the prompts themselves are, or the volume with which people are using similar prompts. So that is yet to come. Will has mentioned that he's seen like one tool that's out there kind of scraping some data, but it's not anything that's readily available yet. Whereas with Google Keyword Planner, that's always been a tool intended for paid search campaign managers, where we can go in and use it for SEO to understand the volume and the trends of what people are searching. So what's tough is that we don't have clear data or clear data set on exactly how people are interacting with the non-Google AI tools. And so that can make this tracking and monitoring time a little difficult. We're kind of like going over some hurdles to figure things out.
So Alison mentioned that we've been looking at a bunch of these tools. We actually published a post on the Search Influence blog recently, comparing probably the top 8 at the time that I did this review. One of the great things about having done that that AI SEO masterclass is it gave me an excuse to get into all these tools and see what was under the hood. So a lot of the like Fortune 500 types are using Profound. One that we really like, which is kind of scrappy and iterating really fast, is Rank Scale. We've used advanced web ranking forever in our dashboards. I mean, in like maybe as long as 18 years. And they're starting to come out with tracking of these engines. The challenge there is that you have to specifically define each of the prompts. And the one that we have settled on to actually integrate into the Search Influence dashboards is called Scrunch. And the reason that we like there's actually a bunch of reasons we like Scrunch, but they have the most flexible pricing, so they work well both for for smaller enterprises and for big enterprise. They're thinking forward into not just what is this data that we can acquire, but what can we do with it next? So starting from looking at the results that are out there online to how can we turn this into actionable guidance for people who are going to actually optimize toward this. So if you're a current client and you want to see about integrating this data into your dashboards, talk to your account manager. And if you're not a current client, feel free to email me and I'll make a connection between you and the biz development team at Scrunch. It's a fast moving space. I definitely wouldn't sign a 5-year contract with any of these folks. Um, but but you know, it's data that I think we need to start tracking so that we can at least understand what's next.
Yeah, and just real quick to kind of tighten up, I guess, that for our current clients so they understand the roadmap. What we're doing most immediately is refining our AI traffic referral report. So that's going to be the one you saw that's going to be in the Looker dashboards, and it's coming from GA4. So it's telling us what traffic are you getting from AI search. Second phase is going to be leveraging advanced web ranking, which is the tool we already use for keyword tracking and positioning. It's opening up some new data around positioning and AI overviews, and then to come will be positioning in ChatGPT. So that's our kind of phase 2. And then phase 3 is what Will's talking about here, which is a Scrunch, or a platform like it that's a little deeper, where effectively what you do in those platforms is you say, these are the prompts I want to monitor, and it will effectively prompt the AI with those prompts and then let you know whether you're present, what's the sentiment score of the answer, are your competitors present, are you cited, things like that. And so obviously, as a more robust tool, takes a little more development for us to get it into, transparent visibility with our clients in Looker. And so in the meantime, if you're interested and you really want a tool like that now, feel free, like Will said, to contact your account manager, myself, or Will, and we can definitely get you in touch for a more direct relationship with Scrunch until that's readily available. Thanks, Will. I just wanted to sum that up.
So how do we help? Just to kind of wrap this around so that you can, have a sense of where we're going and are thinking about it. We want to protect where you currently are. As you can see, number one rankings aren't necessarily going to be the winning play. We're thinking a lot about entities and how we can derive from your existing content as well as the existing search data what entities are most relevant. One of our teammates, whom some of you may know, Chuck, is like super schema nerd. Probably like 18 months ago, I came to him and I said, "Hey, Chuck, here's everything I know about schema," and he has totally blown me away. So our relationship to schema is deeper than most and probably not healthy. So if you want to know more about that, just let us know. We're actively rewriting a lot of content to make sure that it's as conforming to the way that AI search wants it. We've been thinking about this stuff for the last decade, but now there's definitely a formula, and it's a good idea to rethink some of those kind of leading statements within the page because they're the most important. And then the piece that I'm really excited about is content syndication. The data shows that among the AI tools, they are not referencing the same citation sources, right? So there's only one winner, and it's Wikipedia. Below that, it's a bunch of different sources. On Google, it's YouTube and Reddit. On ChatGPT, maybe it's LinkedIn and some forum sites. So what it means is that if we can take that great rich content that's entity rich and about you, and recraft it to work well in these other platforms, that's going to be a big win. And we're already doing a few projects where that's the sole purpose. So we're happy to help in any of these ways. And with that, we'd love to have some more questions. Thanks to y'all who've done the questions in the Q&A already.
Yes, it looks like. Paul, are you gonna kind of moderate the question?
I'll moderate this. So Doreen asked, how can we tell how much traffic is coming to our site from generative AI sources? And so Alison alluded to this a bit with the Looker report, but you can set up a special filter in Google Analytics 4 or on your Looker report to segment that traffic. So you can look specifically at the traffic where somebody is clicking from ChatGPT, etc., to your website. That does not include Google's AI overviews, because that is coming in as Google search. So if you need a little bit of technical guidance to set that up, feel free to email me, pfrench@searchinfluence.com, and we'll get you some information there. And then Shannon asked, would answering questions in Google Business Suite help? Will did touch on this, but the answer is definitely yes. And you can reinforce your entities and their connections in your Google Business Profile posts. So our third question that relates to that, Will, is how do Google reviews, et cetera, fit into this? Would you say that the content and relevance of those posts will increase your semantic relevance?
Yeah, I think, and especially Ryan, in a local context, which is where I know most of your business comes from, the Google Business Profile is still kind of the primary source for Google AI Overview's understanding of you. So you can't always control what people write in their review, but you can always control how you respond to their review, right? So if you say, if you're talking about, you know, uh, and I'm going to use this example, but you probably can't actually do it because of confidentiality. But if somebody writes up there, Ruth and Ruth are the best attorneys I've ever worked with, and you were to respond back, thanks so much. It was a pleasure to work with you on your wills and trusts in St. Pete Beach, right? So what you're doing there is you're connecting you with wills and trusts and St. Pete Beach. So so I think anywhere that you can, like, that, it's a mindset shift, is to think about, like, what is the thing that I want to be associated with in this context, and then just banging that drum all day long. Alicia asks, is the idea that the AI will pick up the chunk verbatim? And the answer is sometimes yes. Often it's like a little bit rearranged, but using the example higher education SEO, which is one that I went through and actually individually re-optimized that page to just be the perfect semantic response at the top of the page. I've seen a number of instances of that AI overview where it picks up my chunk almost verbatim.
That's good to know. I don't even think I've realized that. All right. Doesn't look like we have any other questions in the Q&A or in the chat. So I will take us home real quick and get y'all out of here. So I know we covered a lot today, and it probably felt like a little bit of a fire hose. So I wanted to make sure that we landed you with some key takeaways that, if you learned anything, I would hope that you'd remember these few things. So number one is that the majority of search is still happening on Google. ChatGPT is the rising star of the alternative AI-powered search tools. So if we're going to pay attention to anything, I think those are your two that you should be focused on. Second is the SEO tactics that we've long been focused on are still key players for AI search optimization, with just some adjustments in execution. So this includes content structure, schema, internal linking, offsite mentions, citations. All these things are things that have already been fundamental to the practice of SEO, and at least the practice of search influence SEO. And so now it's really just kind of tweaking them ever so slightly so that they align better with this whole entity first idea rather than keyword first. And third is to, if you were going to walk away with anything, because many of you are in control of your own websites and all of these other assets that maybe we don't even work with you on, like your social media, your PR team, all of those things, is to really focus on your content, nail down that phrase, as Will said, like, what is the one thing you really want to be known for, and focus on your content, structure it, chunk it, and then get it out there in all the places that you possibly can. Fourth is to build entity-focused internal links and offsite citations, which you can do through some of that content distribution that we were talking about. And then last is the tracking and analysis is coming. So it's going to be traffic focused today. It's going to be positioning and AI overviews, I say tomorrow, but soon. And then positioning and other AI-powered tools coming very soon, as we can get it ready for you guys.